She was my best friend's mom, the one woman I should never look at this way. But the more I tried to resist, the more I found myself drawn to her, and she knew it too. I still remember the first time I really saw her. Not just as my friend's mom, not just as the woman who asked if we wanted more snacks during late-night video games, but as someone I couldn't quite look away from. It happened on an ordinary Saturday afternoon. My friend had asked me to come by and help him set up something in the garage. I wasn't expecting anything unusual, just another casual hangout. But the moment she opened the door, everything felt different. She wasn't dressed up, not really. A soft cardigan, simple jeans, her hair loosely tied back. Yet there was something about the way she carried herself, a kind of grace that didn't need to be announced. She smiled, warm and natural, and said my name in a way that instantly made the house feel brighter. I'd been in their home countless times before, but that day I noticed things I'd never really paid attention to. The faint floral scent of her perfume hung in the hallway, subtle but lasting. The gentle rhythm of her footsteps on the hardwood floor. Even the way the afternoon sunlight fell across her shoulders as she stepped aside to let me in, it all felt different. I tried not to stare, but my eyes betrayed me. She had the kind of beauty that didn't scream for attention, the kind you only noticed when you slowed down enough to really look. The faint lines near her eyes hinted at years of laughter and maybe a few quiet heartbreaks. Her presence was calm, collected, but beneath it, I sensed something else. A softness. A vulnerability she didn't show openly. She asked me how I was doing, her tone casual, but there was a sincerity in her voice that made it feel like she genuinely cared about the answer. Most people ask that as a formality, but with her, it felt real. I found myself wanting to answer honestly, to say more than the usual, "I'm fine." Then came the smallest moment, but it lingered in me all day. As she reached to take my jacket, her hand brushed against mine. It was nothing, just the quick, everyday touch of politeness, but the warmth of her skin stayed with me. I don't think she even noticed, but for me, it sent a ripple through the quiet air between us. I caught myself thinking how unfair it was, that she could make me feel this way without even trying. She was older, yes. She was supposed to be just my friend's mom. Yet here I was, noticing the way a strand of hair slipped loose from her bun, the way her lips curved when she smiled. I told myself it was just admiration. Just respect. But deep down, I knew it was already something more, something I shouldn't want, but couldn't stop feeling. And in that instant, before my friend even appeared, I knew this story wasn't going to be simple. It was supposed to be nothing. Just another casual visit to my friend's house. We were setting up in the garage, but like always, he got distracted, running off to grab something he'd forgotten. I stayed behind, waiting, trying to look busy. That's when she came in. The room was quiet except for the faint ticking of a wall clock and the sound of her footsteps approaching. She carried a tray with 2 cups of tea, one for me and one, I assumed, for her son when he returned. She didn't have to do that, but she always did. It was in her nature to make sure people were comfortable, cared for. "Here," she said softly, setting 1 cup down in front of me. Steam curled upward, carrying the delicate scent of chamomile. Her hand lingered on the edge of the porcelain for a second longer than necessary. I reached out to take it, and that's when it happened, the brush of her fingers against mine. A tiny thing, gone in an instant. But I felt it as if someone had placed a spark directly into my skin. I glanced up, and she was already looking at me. Not in the way you glance at someone by accident, but in a way that felt intentional, as if she was searching for something in my eyes. The moment stretched, too long for comfort, too short for satisfaction. I cleared my throat, pretending to focus on the tea. "Thank you," I murmured, my voice lower than I expected. She smiled, that same warm, practiced smile, but her eyes told a different story. They lingered, soft yet steady, before finally turning away as she moved to tidy up the table. The silence was heavy, but not awkward. It was a silence that spoke more than words could. Every sound seemed amplified, the clink of the teaspoon, the quiet exhale of her breath, the soft rustle of fabric as she adjusted her sweater. I tried to remind myself, she's your friend's mom. This is harmless. Just tea, nothing more. But my body betrayed me. My pulse quickened. My thoughts scattered. And when she leaned over slightly to wipe the counter, her shoulder brushed against mine. Just the gentlest touch, but it left me frozen in place. Neither of us moved immediately. My eyes dropped to the floor, but I could feel her presence beside me, the warmth of her body close enough that it felt like a magnet pulling me in. Finally, she stepped back, clearing her throat as if to release the tension. "He'll be back in a minute," she said, her tone casual, almost too casual. I nodded, forcing a smile. Yeah, no rush. But inside, my thoughts were tangled. That tiny brush of her hand, that brief closeness, it shouldn't have mattered. It shouldn't have stayed with me. But it did. It burned into my memory, subtle and undeniable. And though I didn't want to admit it, I knew I was beginning to crave these moments, the quiet, stolen ones where it was just her and me, with no one else watching. It was late afternoon, and the house had grown unusually quiet. My friend had gone out to run a quick errand, leaving me waiting in the living room. I thought I'd spend those minutes scrolling through my phone, but instead, I found myself in conversation with her. She sat across from me, cradling a mug of tea between her hands. The light from the window fell across her face, highlighting the faint lines near her eyes, not flaws, but traces of a life fully lived. She looked at me with a kind of openness I wasn't used to, as if, for once, she wasn't playing the role of the mom everyone expected her to be. At first, it was simple talk. She asked about school, work, plans for the future. I answered, but I noticed how intently she listened, as though my words mattered more than I believed they did. Then, almost without realizing it, she began sharing things about herself. "You know," she said softly, swirling her tea, "sometimes I feel invisible. People see me as a parent, as someone's wife, someone's caretaker. But not me." Her voice cracked on that last word, and she quickly glanced away, embarrassed by her own honesty. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "I don't think anyone could ever look at you and not see you," I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked back to mine, surprised. There was a pause, like she was deciding whether to accept the words or brush them off. For a moment, she simply held my gaze. "You're kind," she murmured, almost to herself. "Most people don't notice. Or maybe they don't want to." I didn't know what to say, but I didn't look away. And maybe that was enough. Because she sighed, as if the simple act of being seen, really seen, gave her a kind of relief. She told me about little things, how she used to paint before life got too busy, how she loved rainy mornings but rarely slowed down enough to enjoy them, how sometimes she missed the freedom of being young. I listened, letting her words sink in, and for the first time I realized how lonely she must have felt, even surrounded by family. The way she spoke wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't small talk. It was raw, unguarded, the kind of honesty people usually hide. And with every word, I felt myself drawn closer, not just to her presence but to her truth. Her laugh came suddenly when she remembered something light, a sound soft and genuine. And then, just as suddenly, her eyes welled slightly. She brushed it away with a quick smile, as though she regretted letting me see it. I wanted to reach across, to place my hand over hers, to let her know she didn't have to hide that side of herself. But I didn't. Instead, I just said quietly, "I'm glad you told me." She gave me a small, lingering smile, one that said more than words could. And in that silence, in that simple exchange, something shifted. This wasn't just attraction anymore. It was connection. And it scared me more than I wanted to admit. It happened in the smallest, most ordinary way. That's how these things always seem to start. We were standing in the kitchen, waiting for my friend to come back from a quick trip to the store. She was tidying up, moving slowly, as if lost in thought. I offered to help, reaching for the stack of plates beside her. Our hands touched at the same time. It should have been nothing, just a passing brush of skin against skin, but the moment it happened, neither of us pulled away. Her fingers lingered against mine for a heartbeat too long. My chest tightened. The air between us shifted. She glanced up at me, and suddenly we were standing far too close. Her face was just inches from mine, close enough for me to see the flecks of gold in her eyes, close enough to feel the faint warmth of her breath. I froze, caught between instinct and restraint. Every part of me screamed to lean in, to close the distance, but the weight of who she was, who I was, held me back. She must have felt it too, because she didn't move. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something, but the words never came. The silence grew thick, charged with everything neither of us dared to voice. Then she reached up, slow, careful, and adjusted the collar of my shirt. A meaningless gesture, something any older woman might do for a young man. But the way her fingers brushed the base of my neck made my pulse race. My skin tingled where she touched me, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. I looked at her, really looked, and what I saw wasn't just kindness or beauty. It was longing. A flicker of something unspoken, restrained, and dangerous. My lips parted, words hovering, but before I could say anything, she shook her head gently, almost imperceptibly. "This isn't right," she whispered, her voice trembling. The words cut through the moment, but they didn't undo it. Her hand dropped from my collar, and she stepped back just enough to put space between us. Still, the trace of her touch burned on my skin. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to nod. "I know," I whispered back, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. She turned away, busying herself with something on the counter, but I could see the slight tremor in her hands. She was fighting it, just as I was. For the rest of that evening, nothing more happened. We carried on as if the moment hadn't existed. My friend returned, laughing, chatting, oblivious to the storm that had just passed between his mother and me. But inside, I couldn't shake it. That closeness, that spark, it was dangerous. Forbidden. And yet, for the first time, I realized just how impossible it would be to pretend I didn't want it. It was late in the evening when I found her again. The house was unusually still. My friend had gone upstairs hours ago, probably asleep by now. I should have left, but something held me there, some quiet pull I couldn't explain. I wandered into the living room, and there she was. She sat alone on the couch, one leg curled beneath her, a glass of red wine in her hand. The lamp beside her cast a soft glow, wrapping her in warm light. She looked tired, but not in the way someone does after a long day. This was a deeper kind of tired, the kind that comes from carrying more than anyone realizes. For a moment, I just stood there, watching. She didn't notice me right away. She was staring into the glass, lost in thought. Her lips parted slightly, as if she was about to speak to someone who wasn't there. When she finally looked up, she didn't seem surprised to see me. Instead, she gave a small, weary smile. "You're still here?" she asked softly. "Yeah," I said, my voice low. "Couldn't sleep." I crossed the room and sat beside her, not too close, but close enough to feel the faint warmth radiating from her. For a while, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the quiet hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the faint clink as she set her glass down on the table. Then, almost out of nowhere, she said, "I don't know what's happening to me." I turned to her, surprised. "What do you mean?" Her eyes met mine, unguarded and vulnerable. "You make me feel something I thought I'd forgotten how to feel. And I can't decide if it terrifies me, or if it's the only thing keeping me alive right now." Her words struck me like a blow. I didn't know how to respond, I just knew I couldn't look away. "I feel it too," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "And I don't know what to do with it." Her hand rested on her knee, trembling slightly. Without thinking, I reached over and covered it with mine. The contact was gentle, hesitant, but the way her shoulders eased told me she didn't mind. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything we'd been holding back. She took a shaky breath. We can't, I know," I interrupted, but my thumb brushed softly over the back of her hand. "But pretending it's not there won't make it go away." Her eyes glistened, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. Instead, she let out a soft laugh, not of amusement, but of surrender. We didn't kiss. We didn't cross that final line. But we sat there, knees touching, hands entwined, hearts racing with the knowledge that the truth was out now. We couldn't hide it anymore. And in that quiet room, under the glow of a single lamp, we both knew, whatever came next, nothing between us would ever be the same. The night stretched on longer than I expected. I thought I would leave after our brief conversation, but something in her eyes held me there. It wasn't just loneliness. It was conflict, a war between what she wanted and what she believed she should deny. We were still sitting side by side, hands brushing lightly against each other on the couch. Neither of us moved to pull away. Every second of contact felt deliberate, even though neither of us had said a word. Finally, she broke the silence. Her voice was low, almost trembling. "I shouldn't want this. You're too young, and you're his friend. Do you understand what this would mean if anyone ever knew?" Her words were sharp, but her tone was soft, almost pleading, like she was trying to convince herself more than me. I swallowed hard, searching for words. "I do understand," I said quietly. "But does age erase how we feel? Does it erase the connection we have right now?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. She turned away, staring at the floor, her hair falling slightly over her face. I wanted to reach out, to tuck it behind her ear, to touch her the way I had imagined too many times, but I held back. "I've spent years," she whispered, doing everything for everyone else. Being a good wife, a good mother, a good host. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being me. And now, here you are, looking at me like I'm someone worth noticing again. Do you know how dangerous that is? Her words sank into me, heavy with meaning. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, trying to catch her gaze again. It's only dangerous if we pretend it isn't real, I said softly. For a moment, the room felt suspended in time. The faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the wall clock, even the night sounds outside the window seemed to fade into silence. All I could hear was her breathing, uneven, hesitant, but steadying as she turned back toward me. Her hand slipped into mine, not by accident, not by chance, but by choice. I felt the tremor in her fingers as they intertwined with mine, and without thinking, I brushed my thumb gently across her skin. It was such a small act, but the weight of it was enormous. She closed her eyes, inhaling slowly, as though memorizing the feeling. When she opened them again, there was a sheen of tears, but also something else, resolve. We can't let this go too far, she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. But I don't want to let it go completely either. I nodded, my chest tightening with equal parts relief and ache. Then maybe we don't have to decide everything tonight, I said. Her smile was faint, but it carried more warmth than I'd ever seen in her before. She leaned against me, her shoulder brushing mine, her head resting just briefly before she pulled back. That was our choice in that moment, not to define it, not to end it, but to hold on to it quietly, knowing it was real. And though no promises were spoken, the silence between us told me enough, neither of us was ready to walk away. The night had grown deep and still. The house was silent, shadows stretching long across the walls, as if the world itself was holding its breath. We sat together in the quiet, both of us knowing the weight of what lingered between us. Her hand was still in mine, delicate yet firm, like she was afraid to let go. I could feel the faint tremor in her fingers, the subtle quickness of her pulse beneath her skin. It was the kind of closeness that said more than words ever could. Finally, she broke the silence. If anyone knew, she whispered, it would change everything. My son, my family, you. I can't risk that. I can't hurt the people I love. Her words carried conviction, but I could hear the pain underneath them, the ache of someone forcing herself to draw a line her heart didn't want to respect. I nodded slowly, my chest tight. I know, I said. And I'd never want to cause you pain. But I need you to know. I've never felt something this real before. Her eyes softened, shimmering in the lamplight. For a moment, she leaned closer, her face just inches from mine. My breath caught. I thought, no, I knew, she was going to kiss me. And maybe she thought so too, because her eyes lingered on my lips just long enough to make the silence unbearable. But instead, she pulled me into her arms. The hug was long, longer than anything appropriate, longer than anything a friend's mother should give. Her chin rested gently on my shoulder, and I could feel the warmth of her body pressed against mine, steady and trembling at once. I closed my eyes, memorizing the way she smelled, that faint trace of perfume, soft and floral, mixed with something uniquely hers. I shouldn't want this, she whispered into my ear. But I do. God help me, I do. I held her tighter, wishing time would stop, wishing the world outside that moment didn't exist. My hand brushed softly along her back, not in desire, but in reassurance, a promise unspoken. When we finally pulled apart, her eyes glistened with unshed tears. She cupped my face gently, her thumb brushing against my cheek in the most tender gesture I'd ever known. "You'll always matter to me," she said, her voice breaking. "Even if this never becomes anything more." I swallowed hard, fighting the lump in my throat. "And you'll always matter to me," I whispered back. There was no kiss, no dramatic declaration. Just the simple truth: we had stepped into something real, something forbidden, and we both knew it would stay with us, no matter what happened next. Before I left that night, she pressed a soft kiss to my cheek. A small gesture, but one that burned into me more than any words could. As I walked away, the night air cool against my skin, I knew the story between us wasn't about stolen moments or reckless choices. It was about connection, quiet, undeniable, and unforgettable. And even if nothing more ever came of it, I knew I would carry that connection with me for the rest of my life.